Hey, how's it going?
Hey Nate, how you doing?
Pretty good. Oh yeah,
Good, good,
this is
good.
really
Thanks
really
for
cool.
asking me to join you.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for joining and everything.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Been practicing entertainment law pretty much since I started. I graduated from law school in '95, and then passed the bar exam and hung my shingle out pretty much right away because I was playing in bands a lot at the time, and I had a lot of friends who worked in the business and were also in bands in Minneapolis, which is kind of where I went to law school and college and lived back in the '90s.
That's super
Um,
cool.
and then wound up moving out to the Bay Area in 2000, and I've just kept my solo practice going for quite a while.
That's really really cool. What were you playing in the band? Guitar, bass?
I was a bass player
Okay.
and vocalist, not a great singer by any stretch. Not even really a great bass player, but it's like good enough to get in bands with some decent players and make some records and stuff. So it's all
That's really
good.
really cool. So what made you come out to Oakland in 2000?
I actually originally moved to San Francisco, and I was just getting bored in Minneapolis, and I'd been there for a while, and it was just starting to feel smaller and smaller. And I had a lot of friends who were moving um, out of the Twin Cities and going to New York or Austin or Portland or San Francisco. And so I had a good friend out here who offered me a room, in a big Victorian flat in the Lower Haight. And I just sort of did the math. I was like, I don't have a girlfriend right now, not playing in a band. Like, I can do this. I can go wherever I want. And so I just decided it was time. And it was a struggle. Like, my rent tripled overnight, and I had to kind of get through the California bar exam and all that jazz. So it was a big change, but I'm glad I did it, and
Okay.
it's really nice. I'm really liking being in Oakland too. I mean, my time in San Francisco was wonderful, but I really enjoy Oakland a lot. So I've been over here for like 8 years.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a really really good place. So when you're taking the bar exam or pretty much studying law period, is there a beginning where every lawyer sort of has a base and then later on you sprout into the kind of law
Yeah,
that you
that's a
want to
good
get into?
question. Um, a lot of people start, I think, with some idea that they want to be this or that, or they want to be that trial lawyer they saw on television, or there a lot of people have some like really interesting ideas about what it involves. When you get into it. Um, for me, I knew I was really interested in entertainment law, and I did a lot of studying even on my own, just reading entertainment industry books and stuff. And by the time I was done with school, I almost felt like that was just the only kind of law I wanted to practice.
Yeah,
I knew I didn't really want to be a litigator. I wanted to help people do business and help teach people, help teach artists like how to look out for themselves. So that was mainly what I was interested in.
okay, that's really really cool. Do you ever find like frustrations because sometimes when I try to talk to like straight edge business people about music business, it's a little frustrating because it's like it's so different. Is that a thing for you also?
Um, what could you rephrase that? Maybe who do you find it hard talking to? Or
Like maybe someone that sells t-shirts or something, or maybe a tech person, like
mm-hmm.
that business. I would say sometimes it could be some similarities, but it's a little tough to explain to other people about the music business or the music industry.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I honestly like a lot of non-musicians have weird ideas about the music business, or they'll I'll be having a conversation with a lawyer, and I'll be like, well, yeah, artists are so flaky, artists are they're flighty, and I'm like, no,
Yeah,
that's not right. Like, artists are like so often like the best self-starters. they're self-motivated, they're creative. A lot of them are really smart and a lot of fun to work with. Not everybody,
Yeah.
but it's like these are the people who are running their own business. They're starting something and believing in something, and they have goals, and they're really great people to work with. And I've, they've always been my people. And I just, when I moved out here, even, I had a ton of friends in the Minneapolis, St. Paul rock scene and everything. But then when I moved out here, there was like all those same people were here. And I immediately fell in through friends and connections with, essentially the exact same crowd, and became very fast friends, and like immediately had a community. Because I spoke that language, and like we all know what it's like, and it's hard, and you do it for love. But if you're smart and you're good, sometimes it becomes a business.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. So after an artist creates a song and they're really excited about it, where are some of the bases that you should have covered?
Well, it's always a good idea to register a copyright. And it's inexpensive to do it. And you just go to copyright.gov and you can register a copyright in a recording, whether it's published or unpublished. What that does is it gives you a lot of protection in case somebody tries to rip it off, and it happens. If it's registered, you can sue someone and get attorney's fees and statutory damages to enforce your claim. And that means it's a lot easier to get a lawyer if you have a problem, especially if it's ripped off by somebody who has money. A lot of people don't know what statutory damages are, but the copyright law provides that basically a judge can basically assign damages, so that you don't have to prove that you lost money. You don't have to prove that the person who ripped you off made money. The judge can just say, I'm going to charge you $5,000 for every copy you made in damages. Just like, I just determined that. Whack.
Yeah.
Pay them. So those things can be, really important in protecting your work. The other things would be to register with ASCAP or BMI or CSAC as a songwriter, so that you collect your royalties in case it gets some airplay or something like that. So you affiliate with those companies either as a composer or as a publisher. And if you're just starting, you're probably self-published, so you can affiliate with them as a publisher as well. And then these days, also registering your recording with Sound Exchange is really important, because that's become a really important stream of revenue these days for both record labels and for artists. What happened is that the Digital Millennium Copyright Act created a public performance right in a master recording.
Okay.
So you've always got two pieces of a copyright. You've got the song, which is the composition, and then you've got the master recording, which is that particular recorded version of that song. And generally, the record company the record label often owns the master recording. It's not always the case, but sometimes the artist owns it, and unless you have if you don't have a deal with the record company, then you own whatever recording you create. So what's important about that is that there didn't used to be a public performance right in the master recording. That means that if your record got played on the radio, the record company didn't get a royalty for that. It was regarded as, just a promotional use. And the artist didn't get a royalty for that play. But now, if your recording is played digitally, there's still not a royalty for that on analog radio, but there should be. If it gets played digitally, so like you get a spin on Sirius XM radio, well, now there's a royalty for that, and it can add up fast, because some of those plays are kind of national broadcasts, and it also applies to a lot of other small plays, but sound exchange royalties have become really important. And they're keeping record labels afloat, because if you got records that are getting a bunch of spins on satellite radio, that adds up. That's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Okay.
So registering with Sound Exchange is really important. And it's soundexchange.com. It's exactly the way it sounds, one word. And you can even go to Sound Exchange and type your band's or artist's name in and see if they have royalties waiting for you, if you haven't claimed them already, which is, easy enough to do. And they'll work with you to get stuff registered. If you need help, you just call them, and they'll take care of you. So,
okay.
So good stuff to know. And that's a lot of what, people come to me sometimes with a lot of questions about that stuff, and you just try to point them in the right direction. At least I don't need to do all that for you. Like you can do it. You don't need to pay me to do it.
Mm-hmm. That's really, really cool. Yeah, they also they have that letter direction thing. That's pretty cool too.
Yeah, to pay a producer, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was also producers who often have points on a master recording. Say a producer has, is entitled to 3% of the income from that record. Well, Sound Exchange can pay them directly, which is great.
Okay.
And then the artist doesn't have to deal with bookkeeping, and the label doesn't. So
that's really, really cool.
Yep, that comes in handy for you for sure.
Yeah, it could be a pain, like flagging down an artist every once in a while to say you got the 3%.
Yeah.
For the record.
Yeah. Nobody's keeping the books.
Yeah.
What have you been working on lately?
I'm working on a project right now, Trillionaire too.
Mm-hmm.
That's going pretty good.
Who are you working with people on that, or is it mostly you?
Yeah, it's working with people. So I was getting a little frustrated because as a producer, it could be tough to get work and stuff out there because you're basically depending on the artist to use the record that you guys worked on. Sometimes your song doesn't make the album, or they take a long time putting it out, or maybe a third person on the song didn't approve it.
Mm-hmm.
So like things like that. So I started doing like a Calvin Harris or a DJ Khaled sort of thing, where I'm producing records and bringing artists in, and it's me featuring them. So that's what this one is.
So you're the boss.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I really love producing and stuff, and I like working with artists rather than trying to do everything myself. So it's a good way of putting product out there without having to depend on artists to put it out.
Are you putting the stuff out yourself, or are you going through a label, or?
It's myself right now. I'm using self distribution.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so easy to distribute stuff electronically now, and physical sales are certainly not what they used to be, unless you're, like that band that just, sells a lot of limited edition vinyl and stuff like that. So it's certainly easy enough to distribute yourself. The hard part's promoting it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's definitely pretty interesting. So when you're like get into this stuff, because maybe artists may not have a lot of money to like do copyrights or trademarks and things like that. So do you recommend just going for it and kind of cleaning up the mess later, if that's a thing?
It's not really. I mean, I think a good lawyer can really pay for themselves. Like, you need to always prioritize and decide how much, you can really spend on having a lawyer give you tips and point stuff out. But you might be able to learn a lot more from talking to me for an hour than you'd learn from reading a lot of books.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. And then certainly when you have something you need to negotiate, or contracts or something like that, then I think it's really important to hire a lawyer, to avoid, the pitfalls where you could get signed to a really bad deal for a number of years and just be incredibly frustrated. So, I can save people a lot of time, a lot of grief sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, cleaning up the mess later is not always so easy. In fact, a lot of times people come to me with or call me with 10-year-old messes, and it's just like, I wish I could help you, but it's too late. I cannot untangle like all of these problems. It's too late. And I know that by that time I'm probably like the third attorney that they've talked to, that week, because they're just dealing with a hot mess. And there's no amount of money. I can't turn back the clock, to 10 years ago. It's not possible. So it can be really bad to to not get help and let a situation really fester. I try not to judge people. Like if you go to an accountant and they're like, I haven't filed my taxes in 8 years, like, oh, they're gonna be like, okay, I can help you with that, but they can only help you so much.
Yeah. So, do you believe that like an artist in the beginning may have to sacrifice a few things to take that next step? So maybe take not the best deal for them at the time, but maybe they take that deal and do really good and then renegotiate later on.
Yeah, sometimes. And I think that's kind of the way everything works, whether you're an artist or an athlete, your first deal you sign is not going to be great in all likelihood. But you try to make it as short as you can so that if things go well, you're able to renegotiate. When I see people who are, really green getting locked into contracts that might take 4 or 5 years to perform, and they don't even know this person they're getting involved with all that well, those things make me really nervous as a lawyer, because I don't want to see somebody get tied up for that long, in the exact same contract. I mean, fortunately, contracts for like personal services are limited to, a contract that can be performed in 7 years, because slavery is not legal anymore. But some contracts can drag on for a really long time, especially if you're not putting out an album every 6 months or whatever. So yeah, it's you just want, your first deal is not going to be your best probably, but then, as things get better, and sometimes you even want to just renegotiate, if you can, even if there's not really an obligation on the part of the label. Sometimes you go back and say, hey, look, things have changed. Like, we're selling a lot more records than we thought we were going to, we're doing a lot better. If you don't sweeten the pot a little bit, we may have a problem.
Yeah. Okay. That's really, really cool. So does that are like the same principles in music business? Would you apply those to other intellectual property, maybe like logo designs or a piece of artwork, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the issues are really similar. All those things involve trademarks or copyrights, and then sometimes trademarks as well, often trademarks as well. So a lot of the issues that I deal with that's really just a couple of the common threads, right? So I need to know that subject matter pretty well and be able to write contracts that take those things into account kind of carefully. Mm-hmm. For sure. But that's a big part of what I do. And there's a lot of gray area in both contracts and trademarks. And I think that's one thing that I kind of like about it. It's pretty nuanced, and you can get different opinions sometimes, and you don't always know which way a case is going to go. But if you've been doing it long enough, at least if you know you got the principles down, then hopefully you have pretty good compass.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So at what point would it be a good idea to sue or to say this is not necessarily worth suing for? Is it the amount of money or things like that?
Well, yeah, there's got to be money somewhere. Although, I mean, litigation is terribly expensive. Um, and, you really ideally want the defendant to have made a significant amount of money somehow. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be worth it. But like I was saying before, if you have your copyrights registered and you've taken care of all your business, you're in a much better position to take action against somebody. So that's a key thing. It's like, cleaning up the mess later is really hard to do if you didn't take care of business to begin with. So, I don't deal with a ton of lawsuits. I work sometimes with a litigator in San Francisco who's a good friend of mine when I come into a really problematic situation. Because I don't really litigation is not really my jam. But there's times when it's necessary. So, yeah.
Okay. So I know a problem of mine sometimes and other artists, because sometimes we're making music with our friends we grew up with since we were like 12 and things like that. And sometimes it could be tough to introduce the paperwork and the business into those situations.
Right.
So,
and here's the thing though, like, if you don't, then the problem is you might lose a friend later. If you get into some kind of dispute where nobody understood what the deal was. Whereas if you put it in writing, you avoid that problem because everybody understands what the deal is. And you might have a polite conversation, before you hand them a piece of paper and say, here's something my lawyer drew up, like, please sign it. But you're always going to be better off if you put it in writing. Even if it's simple, like draw it on a cocktail napkin, like that's better than nothing because it helps you avoid a misunderstanding down the line. And I've seen friendships really damaged by just that. You get together with people and you write a song, and then later there's a dispute about who wrote what. Like everybody remembers it differently, which is why I always tell people to just like have a split sheet when you're in the studio, and somebody comes up with an important part of the song, just like make a note of it. But those things it's challenging because like music's a team sport, and you just got to get everybody on the same page, because you're not a team if everybody's running in a different direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it is difficult sometimes to introduce the paperwork, but it's always for a good reason. Like I do think like a lot of bands should have a partnership agreement if they're into it, if they're sharing a band name and doing a lot of work and investing a lot in their partnership, then you might want to have a partnership agreement that says like, how does somebody get kicked out of the band? What do they get if they're kicked out of the band? Who owns the name? All those things are really important. They save you tons of trouble down the line. So it's worth it.
Okay. That's really, really cool. So do you think an artist needs a record label in today's time with the technology and YouTube and things like that?
What you need a label for is for promoting your work, for funding it sometimes, and for physical distribution of physical media, CDs and vinyl. Because it's asking a lot of an artist to be the performer and probably have a day job too, and then sort of find some way to like raise money to promote stuff as well. Now, it's definitely easy enough to electronically distribute stuff on your own. So it just sort of depends on what your goals are and where you want to be and how much work you want to do. So do you need a label? Maybe not. A lot of labels have gone away. frankly, because it was hard enough for them to make money. But if you're a band that really needs some promotion and you're at a certain level, then it often makes a lot of sense, especially if you can negotiate a fair deal. So, I mean, I think labels still have a really important role to play in promotion and to some degree in curation too. Like when I was growing up, I would buy any music that was on certain labels, right? Because like I trust that label. Like I know that if they put it out, it's probably good, and they're good curators.
You like Motown?
So yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. And for me, it was like Sub Pop and SST and Homestead. Those were my like kind of indie rock, punk rock labels. I would go back to all the time. Touch and Go, Discord, all that stuff. So that was just like a stamp of approval. It's like another trademark on the record that says we believe in this.
Yeah.
And I think that labels can be really good boost in that regard. It's an association.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. What about publishing companies? Are those necessary for songwriters or producers?
That's a hard one. I mean, I think you can certainly benefit from having a publisher, especially if you're at a higher level. Like they can really help promote your work and create earning opportunities, placement opportunities in films and all that. When you're lower level, these days, I don't find that publishing companies offer a whole lot in terms of advances. They will sign up anything they can for free, and they take a hefty percentage of earnings. And all they do to value your work is ask you how much it earned over the last year or two. And so for a lot of the indie artists that I represent, like I have some doubts as to whether it's really great to have a publishing company. Maybe if it's the right publishing company, maybe if they really have a specific interest in you. But I wouldn't be anxious to go and sign over, songs to a publishing company, especially if you're kind of a lower level artist. Yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Okay. And also, let me see. What do you like about where music is right now, or what are some changes that you think needs to be made to the music business?
Well, I think people's access to music is really incredible right now. You can, if you have the desire and curiosity, you can find so much music so easily these days and listen to it and stream it. I mean, Spotify is a pretty miraculous thing, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's easy for people to distribute their music on their own too, like we were saying, digitally at least. The problem is people aren't getting paid enough.
Yeah.
There's just, the royalties for streaming are just terrible. And we're still trying to get past this Napster phase where people think that music should be free or cost next to nothing. And I just think that even a $10 subscription to a music service like Spotify, it's too cheap. That's unlimited music for a month for $10. Like, it's not good enough. It's not paying musicians what they deserve to be paid. And to me, like, those royalties are they're insufficient. And I think that that's something that, I hope we'll see that change before too long. But I just, don't think people are buying tons of music digitally. And when they stream it, it's just they're not paying enough for that. That's just my opinion. Yeah. But I believe it strongly. And I know that people aren't making what they should be. And that's just kind of reduce musicians to just sort of going out and playing for their supper. It's like we've gone back to the traveling bard era, like where, you just have to find a new audience, every night. And that's tough. I mean, if that works for a band, that's great. At least you have that. At least you have your merch sales. But I mean, trying to make money by selling records right now, it's really, really difficult. And that's not right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that way.
Okay. So what else would you change about business right now, or the way things are being done?
I don't know. It's so hard to think with all these music venues shut down and everything. It's so sad. I mean, that's there are too many venues owned by big companies right now. Yeah. That's a huge problem, in my opinion. So I really do try to support independent music venues. I just think that's a really important thing. Ticketing prices are ridiculous for some of those, venues. And I think that's sad. I'm amazed that people continue to put up with it, but I guess they have so far. I don't know if that's something, I don't think that's necessarily something that needs to be, well, you could probably legislate some of the pricing, but, people just need to vote with their feet and their wallets and just, really try to support independent music a little bit more, I think, these days. Yeah, what else? I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think that video content is still, for music, is still really important. Even without MTV, it seems like if you have a good video presence, that's something that still helps a lot. Mm-hmm. So I think, when people have the ability to kind of at least make some kind of cheap little video, just something visual, that always seems to be helpful. And I'm always kind of amazed sometimes what people can pull off on a pretty small budget, but it just takes some creativity and talent.
Yeah, iPhones are really great because that camera is a lot more clearer than the best cameras back in the day. So you can get
phones have come a long way, haven't they?
Yeah. It's really, really cool. Yeah, even the like the GarageBand app on the iPhone is really, really good.
Oh, right on. I haven't tried that. I mean, I've got an Android phone, but I should see if there's one for that. I've had a couple buddies of mine were talking about that app too, I think.
Okay. Yeah, what's your favorite kind of wines and things like that?
Well, I like all kinds of wine. When I was 21, I got a job working in a liquor store that sold a lot of wine in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it was just, it was a little family-owned small shop, but they had a lot of wine in there, and they had some good books about wine. So I just, I liked wine. My parents drank wine pretty often, but they weren't like connoisseurs or anything. And I just started like learning more about it because I was working around it all the time, and I just kind of read every book that was in the store. And the owner let me start buying the wine because I was selling it, so it made sense for me to buy stuff that I like because then I could sell it to the customers. And yeah, it's really weird. Like I kind of fell into it, and then at that, once you're buying, then people are bringing you stuff to taste, throughout the day, and you're like, oh, I like this, I don't like that so much, I like this, and you really sort of start to get your bearings. And then a friend of mine who was running a little alt weekly talked me into writing a wine column for this alt weekly, and I did that for like 3 years, even when I was in law school. And then when the Minneapolis Star Tribune hired a wine writer, this is back right around late 90s, when a lot of newspapers were hiring wine writers. I ultimately got that job. Somebody else got it for a minute, and then they left, and then I got the job.
Okay.
And then so I moved out to California a little bit after that, continued writing for them, and then just started writing for San Francisco Chronicle, for I've written chapters of big encyclopedias, and I'm the California editor for Hugh Johnson's Pocket Wine Book, which is a really popular guide to wine by a British wine critic
Okay.
and writer.
Never very good. I'm gonna write that down. California's.
Yeah, Hugh Johnson's Pocket Wine Book.
Hugh, how do you spell that?
Hugh Johnson.
Okay, Hugh Johnson. Okay.
Yeah, it's Pocket Wine Book.
Okay, that's really cool.
So I've written for, all kinds of stuff. British magazines and American magazines and stuff like that. And then I judge a lot of wine competitions too. So it's one of those things that I just sort of I half backed into it, but my timing was really good, and I had enough interest in it that I just kind of kept going after it. And the amazing thing is it's allowed me to travel. I get flown all over the world. I don't write as much about wine as I used to, but it's taken me to Australia a couple of times, to South America a few times, all over Europe. Spain, France, Italy, Romania, Portugal, it's Greece. It's taken me everywhere, and I've been able to meet so many cool people, and just taste all the food from all these places and drink all the wines. It's just it's amazing. So it's I like it all. There's some things that I really would go back to all the time. But it's hard for me to limit it. I love champagne. I think port is incredible.
Oh yeah, I just great.
It's oh really?
Yeah, I wrote it down.
People don't appreciate port enough. It's grown in such an incredibly rocky, challenging place, and it's just kind of unique grape varieties, and good port is just incredible stuff. It's a little sweet, but but it's magically delicious. I love German Rieslings. French wine all over the place is amazing.
Okay.
This is, I don't usually buy a lot of wines. I get a lot of wine in the mail, but under this kind of COVID circumstances, I'm not getting a lot lately. So we've been buying some wine, and I just think you can find so many good cheap things. This, I don't know if you can see this. This is a Côte du Rhône from the Perrin family.
I can't really see it, but how do you spell it? I'll write it down.
Yeah. The name of the family is, Côte du Rhône. I love a Côte du Rhône. For me, that's if I had to drink one kind of red wine for the rest of my life, this stuff is $12. This was under 10 at total. But this wine's incredible. It's a blend of Grenache and Syrah and Mourvedre and maybe some other stuff. But it's a good Côte du Rhône to me is super soul satisfying, and they're almost always good, unless you find one that's just really messed up and just technically a problem. But yeah, but I like all kinds of stuff.
That's super cool. When you're judging wine competitions, what are you judging for exactly?
Yeah, good question. So usually a couple of things about the wine, which is really useful. So maybe the vintage, maybe where it's from, and maybe what kind of grape. No, you usually don't know where it's from, but maybe the grape variety.
Okay.
Or or what kind of classification the wine fits into. And then so you judge it for both how much you appreciate it and like it, but also for typicity, meaning it's this Sauvignon Blanc tastes the way a Sauvignon Blanc should. It's got this kind of grassy aroma, and it's got a little bit of this citrus, and it's got a little bit of that, and it's dry, and it's this one smells like it's from New Zealand. New Zealand makes amazing Sauvignon Blanc, and I'm gonna call it that's what this is. It's really high quality. You taste it's got good body, it's got good depth, it's got good length. The flavor just kind of goes on and on. Those are the things you're looking for. And then, sometimes you get a wine where it's just like, it tastes kind of flat, like that just doesn't have very good acidity, or it tastes oxidized, or it's full of like wild yeast, like Brettanomyces. So it smells like a horse, and those things you kind of ding wines for, in a competition. So it's a lot of fun, and you get to hang out and meet a lot of people who've been in the industry for a long time. And that's really kind of cool too. So I might be on a panel with like I'll be the writer, and then there'll be like a sommelier or a master sommelier, and then maybe somebody who's a winemaker. And so everybody has like a little bit of a different perspective, and, then you just sort of talk it through. And, people's opinions can differ a little bit, but, people also, like, good wine judges are pretty good at knowing stuff that's messed up versus stuff that's really good quality.
Okay.
So it's fun. I like doing it. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do a couple of the bigger ones in the U.S., and it's always fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, well, if the world clears back up, I'd love to come to a couple of those.
Yeah, well, we should get together and try some wine, or go out to a wine bar or something. I mean, yeah, the funny thing is, the thing is going in on Oakland and a lot of other places, right, is that there's this big kind of natural wine movement, which is a little frustrating for me, because like I don't know, I like, now I'm like the crotchety old dude.
Yeah.
But some of the natural wines, they're not all messed up, but some of them, it's like they kind of use that as an excuse to be messed up, and just like have a lot of sediment in them, or wild yeast, or they're really oxidized. And I have a hard time with some of that stuff, but that's kind of what's trending right now. People just want, I don't know, a lot more wines that I think are more interesting than they are good. Like it's like, oh, that's cool, but technically it's a little dirty.
Okay, so what is the process of wine? They start off with grapes and ferment.
Yeah. You take grapes, and then you ferment them, crush them, and then press it off the skins. Like with red wine, after a week or two after it's got some color, and then then put it in a tank or a barrel, some kind of vessel, and then let it sometimes finish a second fermentation. And then some people, some people will filter it, to kind of clean it up a little bit. Some people don't like doing that, but there's a lot of different techniques, and there's also a lot of the natural wine thing is a little bit of a rebellion against wines that are like really highly manufactured. Like some wines are not aged in oak barrels. People will put them in a tank with a bunch of wood chips to give them kind of that flavor. They'll flavor them, or sawdust even. And some of those wines are pretty bad. And I'm pretty good at tasting some of those things too. So, but with natural wines, usually a lot of times people will use only native yeast, which can be great. They usually don't fine or filter the wines, which can be a good or bad idea. They don't use a lot of additives. There's things like enzymes that you can add to wine to kind of boost the color and things like that, which a lot of really good quality wines don't really mess with that stuff at all. But so anyway, there's a lot of great wine that isn't considered natural, but it's very, very well made.
Okay, so the bigger wine companies, is it because of how good the wine is, or does some of the branding have to do with it?
Oh, as far as why companies get big?
Yeah.
Well, the biggest wine companies tend to make a lot of wine in that under $10 or $12 kind of area, because like the wine world is like it's kind of a pyramid. A lot of wine is like down at the bottom in terms of volume,
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of those big companies, like, they definitely get bigger because they do a decent job. Like Gallo, for example, is a good example of that. And they make some very nice wines too. You know, like Kendall Jackson makes some terrific wines. They make not only, you know, very affordable, good lower end wines, but they make some very high end wines as well. The Jackson family farms now, you know, and they're really good. And there's some companies that really just pump out, you know, millions of gallons of pretty mediocre wine.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then there's like more famous names at the top. So they're not necessarily massive brands, but they're household names. Like everybody knows them, you know, like the Perrin family has Chateau de Beaucastel in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, where there's you know, Gaia in Piedmont, or these names that are just like kind of just well-known, Bollinger Champagne or Roederer Champagne, that are just respected because they're just the best. You know, they make super high quality stuff, and they don't need to be huge. They're just charging a couple $100 a bottle for what they do.
Yeah. That's really, really cool. I'm interested in learning more about this stuff. Is there a book or something I could read about the wine process or things like that?
Yeah, there are a million. Trying to think, you know, there's what's a really good starter book? I might need to get back to you. There's things like Karen McNeil has the Wine Bible. That's a really well-established book. Hugh Johnson, the guy I work for, has done all kinds of wine books, and he's got some really good basic ones. There's you know, World Atlas of Wine.
Okay.
There's a lot, you know, and that's how I'll hook you up. I've got a million books, Nate.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of how I started learning, and it never ends, you know. So it's like trying to get a book about music or something, right?
Yeah.
Just when you get the most basic information, that's a good place to start. But there's no end to the world of it, which is what, you know, makes it appealing to a geek like me. Right? You know, it's just, you're never going to know it all. You know, you don't even want to try to know it all. You just need to at some point be pretty satisfied with what you know about it, you know, and be willing to keep learning, because it never ends. It's everywhere, and it's always changing. Every vintage is different. So,
Yeah, that's really.
And it's weird in these times with like global warming and everything. You know, it affects crops like that quite a bit. So, you know, you see trends like, all of a sudden they're making like champagne quality sparkling wine in the south of England because they've got the same chalky soil. It's right across the water, and it's gotten warmer in southern England. So there you go. They're growing, you know, English sparkling wine.
Okay. How open would a company be if there was a company and you like their wine, and maybe you want to start your own company? Would it be offensive to like ask them for a root or a piece of the crop?
Oh, no, people do that. People do that quite a bit. I know a couple of really good winemakers who totally got started just begging people for a ton of grapes, you know, or offering to pay them, and say, you know, I'm going to put your vineyard name on there, and I've got a couple grand I can give you. That's how a lot of people get started, actually.
Okay.
So it costs a lot of money to build a winery. So a lot of people are more bootstrapping, like winemakers. They'll just go, maybe they've worked at one winery and they have a line on some good vineyards or fruit sources, and they'll just go talk somebody into selling them a couple tons of grapes, and just make a little bit of wine from this vineyard, a little bit from another vineyard. Yeah, that's done all the time.
Okay.
You know, it's funny, the vineyard, the grower always is looking for a talented winemaker, because that'll help boost the profile of their grapes. So, if they think you're talented, they're always more likely to sell you something.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Super cool. Yeah, it's been a really, really cool conversation. It's been
Good,
encouraging
good.
too.
Yeah. Well, I hope you're doing all right. Are you keeping busy?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty busy. Yes, I'm glad I know how to work technology pretty well, and
Yeah.
also an audio engineer. So uh,
Yep.
I've been taking on like mixing gigs and recording and things like that. A lot of people have been wanting to record music or record audio and things like that since things slowed down. Like people have been wanting to get creative. So being able to help people get creative is a good skill to have.
That's good. Have you got people recording live?
Yeah,
You-
yeah, they're coming in the studio now too. Just been limited sessions over at
Yeah.
25th Street recording. So it's been pretty interesting, and they'll record and just send you all the Pro Tools files and pay you to mix it, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
been pretty good.
Great. Good. Good.
Yeah,
All right. Well, keep in touch.
I definitely
If you
will.
need anything, don't hesitate to call. And yeah, like when things calm down a little bit, we should go out and get a glass of wine.
Yeah, let's totally do that. Yeah, that'd be really cool. And also yeah, 25th Street recording is fairly close to both of us. It's right on 25th and Broadway. So if you want to come by and
Yeah.
check out the studio,
Yeah. I would love to. Actually, that
okay,
sounds great. I would definitely
sure.
love to do that.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
be going out of town tomorrow, and I'll be back Monday. So no, I'll actually be back Sunday. But I'll probably
Okay. Yeah, I'm going out of town for the weekend too.
okay. So I'll send you an email next week or the week after that.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Cheers. Take care, Nate.
All right, have a
Bye
good
now.
one.